Well, good. Welcome, everyone. We're back at the Roman Anton podcast. We have Keith Nolan here with us. Welcome, Keith.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Well, I appreciate your coming. I stalked you, is how I characterized it. So I apologize for that, but I really wanted to have you on.
No, my pleasure. My pleasure. Good to be here.
So to introduce you to the crowd, many folks in Bangkok already know who you are. I've known you over the years. I think the first time I saw you was playing music at Whiskers in maybe 2009, 10, 11, 12, and then another place. So I get confused where I was, but I remember you were playing a jazzy, bluesy set, and it was 2 hours long in a super high-end cigar and whiskey room.
Yeah, that probably would have been Whiskers in Soi 23.
Right. And you guys were awesome. I was like, what in the world is this? Yeah. And I thought, this is out of the ordinary for Bangkok. The song selection, the caliber, and I'm not saying there's not high caliber musicians, but for expats out and about, I was like, this is out of the ordinary. And so that was my introduction to you. I think I caught you relatively early in your time in Bangkok then.
Yeah, I pretty much arrived here in 2000. Yeah. And I had been in Vietnam for a few years prior to that.
Okay.
And prior to that, I'd been in Australia for quite a few years.
Okay.
And always related to music. I was doing music. Music kind of moved me, originally from Ireland to Australia, and Australia to Vietnam. Because from Australia, I was touring a lot with some bands from Australia. And then when I arrived in Vietnam, I think I played there in 94, but went to live there in 95.
Yeah.
And Vietnam was just on fire. It was just electric. And I loved the vibe. And it was my first kind of experience in Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just overwhelmed by, if you come from Dublin and you go to Australia, they're worlds apart. Better weather. And, but when you get to Asia, it's like that, but tenfold.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just, motorcycles all everywhere, traffic. There's no rules at all. So so Vietnam, and then I stayed that was kind of when I got to Vietnam. I kind of decided I had been touring Australia for a long time with different bands, and I'd kind of done that to death, And
10 years though, right?
Yeah, just about. I think 87 to 95.
So did you have a base, or were you constantly on the road in Australia?
No, I had a base in Melbourne. I was living there. I went there as an electrician, but
okay.
I had worked. That was what got me residency in Australia, and I just wanted to see what was out there when leaving Ireland, and then a few years into Australia, I decided. I was in my 20s, so I decided, you know what, I really want to give this a go and be a really professional musician.
Oh, interesting. Can you tilt us a little more towards you? I'll cut this part out.
Sure.
Yeah, just maybe even more.
Yeah, because I can hear it.
Yeah, I'm gonna reach over.
One,
do you mind?
two. If I did this. Oh yeah.
Okay?
Oh yeah, that's better. Okay. Yeah, because I'm trying to find this.
Yeah, it's a weird. I'm not sure if we should have this big a thing on it, but I like the sound of your voice on this one in particular when you heard that. So, okay, so you just said Australia touring, playing. Did you grow up playing?
Yeah.
Okay, you had to have, right?
Yeah, and my pretty much.
Yeah.
And my father was a musician. He was also a mechanic, but he pretty much played every other night of the week. And back in his day, it was like show bands and stuff. So and they were quite famous and well known at that time.
In Dublin proper, or the whole country?
In Dublin proper, but they toured the whole country, in England and I think Scotland.
20-person band, 30-person band, 40-person band, because those show bands could be massive, right?
Yeah, usually 8 or 10.
Can you imagine touring with 8 or 10 musicians?
Yeah. The thing back then, you couldn't get a gig as a 4-piece band. Mm-hmm. There was no groups. The Beatles, started this. Rory Gallagher, I believe, and Van Morrison were one of the first people in Ireland to start a 4-piece group. Yeah. Everybody was like, you're being stupid. No one will ever book you, because only gigs were at dance halls.
Yeah.
So if you couldn't fill a dance hall, and a 4-piece band wouldn't do that, and people wouldn't pay to see 4 people, but they would pay something to see a 10-piece band.
Yeah.
It's just the way it was.
Do you think, Huh. I mean, I'm hearing this version of this for the first time, Irish based here. So was it profitable to be in an 8-person band? And because I assume what you're talking about dance halls, you're 200, 300, 400, 500 people.
I think for the professional ones, they made quite a living because they took it as their job.
Yeah.
And they were on the road constantly. And I know my dad was until pretty much he was married and I was the first child. So after that, he was still kind of working in the daytime. And in his younger years, he'd kind of been on the road for a while and then went back to working and to raise a family, basically. But music had kind of changed since then. Different eras were coming through.
Yeah.
4-piece groups were on the scene, and then there were smaller pubs and venues sprouting up all over the place.
Yeah.
And then, as he got older, and I was well grown up and probably in my own, starting to play in bands myself when I was a teenager. By that time, he was out playing a few nights a week in a pub playing pop and covers and new music.
What did he play?
He played keyboards also,
nice.
organ, and he played everything really. But he came from jazz and blues, and that's kind of when I was growing up. There would be like Chet Atkins, and Jimmy Smith. That's when Jimmy Smith was on in my house all the time. Of course, there was Elvis and other stuff, and all the rock bands in my era. But
how were they in the house? 45s, radio,
LPs, and singles.
And they were 33s or 78s. I mean,
33s and
right.
Yeah, LPs as we know them, not the 8s. And,
right. And so you had these, and did he go to school to become what's essentially a professional pianist?
No, I think, like people just probably had some piano lessons like I did, in the beginning when you're young, and or somebody in the neighborhood, was a piano teacher, would come around the house. And I remember going to my father's parents, my grandparents on my dad's side. And
in Dublin?
Yeah, and they had a piano. So he probably would have got, and we had a piano when I was growing up in our house, So
you remember what kind?
I do, yeah. We had in my house we had a black. It was called London. The brand was called London.
London, London.
Yeah, London.
Huh.
And it was an upright. And it was great. And I loved that piano very much. And it was kind of over the years that both my dad and I, we played it so much it was pretty much on its knees,
Is it still in the family, or did it see
No, we long since moved from that particular house, and parents broke up and all the rest of it. And I actually have no idea what ever happened to that piano, but I remember I came home one day and it was pink. Somebody decided when they painted the inside of the house and all that the piano should be painted, and its beautiful old black gloss had turned into this pale pink. It was like, okay.
What, do you just close the lid when you... Did they spray paint it or brush paint it?
I don't know how
there was no spray painting back then.
It didn't look that good, though.
Pink.
Not in my eyes, yeah.
Did you stop playing it when it was pink, or did you have to suffer through
No,
that?
I think I'd moved out at that point. Later in my teens, I started my apprenticeship, and I moved. The parents had moved out of town, and out of Dublin, and I stayed in Dublin with my grandmother's house to finish my apprenticeship as an electrician.
I would even suggest that changes the nature of the sonics and acoustics if you paint something after that has lacquer, a fine coat of lacquer underneath.
Yeah,
you start to kill the wood.
The piano certainly had some character. I remember right in the middle, and I love these whole tones like D. I love D tuning on a guitar with slide also, but D's are really D and E, like minors, are great funk.
Yeah,
you can really riff in those keys, right? And they're good for your sort of finger exercises and all that. And I remember this D, it was like one of the strings was like stretched, so you get this like zzz, zzz, every time you hit it, and just had a great character.
That was your synthesizer.
I sort of remember that, yeah.
You can bend it if you push the... That's funny. That's a funny memory. I remember we had a grand piano structure that was small, nothing spectacular, but it was in a big room that it was in, and I was getting lessons from a Catholic sister, and I bit into the top right below where the stand is. When I was frustrated, and I bit into it, and I thought, oh, what did I just do? And so I colored it in with black marker, and it made it look even worse. Oh. And my mom was like, what the hell happened?
You bit, I'm surprised you didn't lose your teeth.
I think you're a baby teeth.
Roman's eating the piano.
Well, yeah, and that piano went away, but I'm pretty sure it's still kicking around my hometown. Things like that are traceable, on some level.
You kind of don't appreciate them, when you're young. It's the same with my own city, like Dublin. When I go home now, I'm a tourist in my own city.
Yeah, of course.
When you're young, you don't appreciate architecture. You don't appreciate the streets and the walls and the neighborhood. Yeah, because you're too busy being young, and you just want out of there. Right. You just think, this is a shithole. I don't want to live here anymore. Yeah. Because you don't know, you don't see all the other stuff till you've traveled and till you grow up and you go back and you think, who designed all this? And, you go into Dublin City and you see all the stuff, architecture, and you think, this is amazing. Who did this?
How close to the stuff were you?
Not much when I was growing up.
I mean, were you living near it? Was it you'd walk through town square every day?
Yeah, from the town center. No, you'd have to take a bus. Okay. It was like we were a couple of suburbs.
Could you get there now driving yourself? Is it, or do you not have that good a memory?
Oh no, I could. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? There's some places that I've lived in, I couldn't make my way back to any of it, but my hometown for sure.
Surprisingly, the layout, and they haven't really expanded. They have outside the city because there's been more housing estates and development to expand. So Dublin is much bigger than it used to be. Yeah. Addresses like 25 miles were now considered almost inner city.
Metro Dublin,
maybe not 25 clicks, but yeah. So
we just mentioned Onut. So Onut is considered clearly within the boundaries of close, right?
But if I went to my home area in the north of Dublin, it's a place called Finglas.
Finglas.
Yeah. Very notorious place, or at least it used to be.
For?
Just working class, hard.
Yeah. Okay. You're a Finglas boy. Yeah. Does that mean something?
In fact, I think I did have to change my address to a nicer neighborhood to get accepted, to start my apprenticeship. If you were from Finglas, it was kind of like I'm not sure. Right. We want you in our
so you're being serious about this?
Yeah.
So to start your electrician's apprenticeship?
I had to use my grandmother's address, which was in a nicer area.
Daisy.
Maisie, actually.
Maisie. So that worked.
Close. It was close. Yeah, her real name is Maureen.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're carrying that notion that you're
it was total like working class. Basically.
Right, and does that define you? Are you wearing that like a badge, or is it a scarlet letter, or is it none of the above? And I should mind my own business.
No. I think home. It's kind of like if you appreciate New York, and then you there's Boston,
right?
And people are very proud of where they're from in that suburb because there's things about it. So yeah, I'm happy to be from where it does define you, yes. Yeah. Because you come from an area. I mean, a mile from my place is where you too started.
Okay. I was just going to ask that.
In my school, we all went to the same schools. Went to the same shops. We bought the same sausages and rashers from the same butcher shops.
So were they playing, when war came out, were they playing your neighborhoods?
Shortly, yes. The answer is yes.
Jeez.
So when I was a teenager, I think, Bono and Adam Clayton, and I'd been to Adam's house a few times. Because
in Finglas?
A best friend of mine, was quite close with them. So we could go to the house and when they were rehearsing. They were just young guys, but they were like, I think 3 or 4 years older than us.
Yeah.
But they were like already had a band and had a sound, and they were working on their craft.
Yeah.
So, we'd seen them a bunch of times. They were like walking around the neighborhood. They were just guys, like older teenagers than we were, basically.
So would they identify as Finglesians? Or are they not from the neighborhood?
Yeah, probably not Finglesians, but it is a good name.
But would they say, if you said, hey, Bono, I'm from Finglas, mates, he'd say, yeah, go ahead, welcome.
I'm not sure if Bono would.
Okay.
But the others certainly would.
Yeah,
no, he would.
Okay.
If you're from Finglas, you're kind of like, yeah, you're
Accepted.
it's almost tribal.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Okay.
not so really tribal, but in a sense that it would be recognizable that you're from the same neighborhood. In fact, it's quite unique that in Dublin, okay, back to an American analogy, is if you meet somebody from the States and they speak to you, and if you're an American person, you go, oh, that guy's from Boston.
Yeah, yeah.
You would immediately know by his accent.
Louisiana, California,
New
Midwest.
Orleans,
Yeah, okay.
Texan.
Got it.
That guy's a Texan. Well, inside Dublin, which is a tiny city in the whole of Ireland, we can tell what part of Dublin you're from. If you're north side or east, west, or south of Dublin in itself, and they would pick my accent and say, he's a north sider.
North Sider. So that's what they'd say, North Sider. So that could be Finglas in other areas, but
Yeah,
interesting.
basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's that whole George Bernard Shaw, you know, the Eliza Doolittle, you know, the whole accent identification part of, you know, that's seems very peculiar to the UK. Just that neighborhood identification thing. I mean, because clearly, I'm sure there's groups in New York that would be able to do that, but I certainly wouldn't as an outsider to everything being from Wisconsin, right? So I have a funny accent to them, but it's really interesting how these cities have that, and London claims to do that. Now I'm learning Dublin has that, and you can have that.
I think it's kind of like, I guess it.
Families
I
for
would
generations, right?
Yeah, and I would assume most people that are wherever you're born, that is home to you.
Yeah.
Those smells, those neighborhood, those shops. You know, they have leave quite an impression on you when you're young. You know?
Yeah.
So I think you have a bond with that place.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So
I hope. I mean,
you would hope. You would hope.
Well, you know, maybe from places that are different growing up in, for example, dangerous places or war-torn areas, or, you know, and it could just be a 5-year period, but if you grow up in that, then the affiliation may not be as strong, or maybe, God, it was horrible then. I'm glad it's good now, but it's interesting. So are you, with these lessons, are you identified as a high potential, or are you identifying yourself as one, or are you going to do this regardless what anyone tells you, and you're going to do like your dad and get a backup job? Or how is this all shaping up in your head, or is it not? Are you just partying and a wild man, and you're trying to open up for U2 or Rory Gallagher?
No, I think the wild man days are long gone.
We're talking about your high school days.
Oh,
here now.
my high school days. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, you know, I think maybe, I don't know, not that it's every young man or woman's, ambition or aspiration to be. I think in my younger days, I would admit to saying I really was ambitious, and I wanted to see the world, and I really thought where I was from wasn't really going to provide it for me. And I did want to see the world. I wanted to experience other things. And I figured, well, if it doesn't work out, I can always go home. But I wanted to give it a shot. And I was already kind of playing as a teenager. And I was trying to work my way up in my teens to my early 20s as somebody that could hold it with the big guys.
Okay, as a pianist.
As a keyboard player.
Yeah.
And I was in rock bands and original bands and just trying to work my way up, and cover bands as well.
So were you starting with synthesizer yet, or were you just, I hope they have an upright there, or geez, I hope there's a piano within
I had electric keyboards.
Okay.
Yeah, and
like a Fender Rhodes style, old school, or something?
Eventually I had a Rhodes, Stage Rhodes 88 Mark II. But,
yeah.
I started with a Vox organ.
Wow.
Which I paid £108 for. And the only gig I could get was playing Deep Purple. And I had a Marshall stack. I had a 100-watt Marshall head with a 200-watt 4-speaker cabinet, which was originally owned by XTC, and it was
nice.
Somehow in a shop I bought it.
See, wouldn't you like to have that one in the storage locker back in Dublin?
Yeah,
to pull out
I'd love to have all that stuff now.
The boys.
Oh my God, if I had some of the keyboards and amps that I had back then.
So what was the model of the Rhodes?
It was, my first keyboard was a Vox organ Continental.
Okay. And did that have the
but my dad had a Leslie, so I used to steal his. So eventually, I used to borrow his. He had a Vox organ as well. He had a 2-tier Continental
Wow.
300B, I think it was called.
I think
And
Keith
so I'd
Emerson-
borrow that, and eventually I had to pay and go and buy my own, which took a long time working on a milk truck and working, you know.
So I think the
odd
guys
jobs.
from Yes had that. Emerson, Lake and Palmer had that on stage, right? I mean, so that was pretty ubiquitous in a lot of the UK acts
Yeah,
that were going to be Prague or going to
Sure.
be, right? And
but
so,
they had Hammond B3s and
Right.
C4s and stuff, and I was kind of a long way from owning. But that was my dream because I was a huge Jimmy Smith fan by then, because I was brought up listening to. That was what was going on in my house. So, you know.
yeah, the few clues you have on your social media sort of indicate the Hammond's your favorite and Jimmy Smith is a
Yeah,
favorite. Right?
yeah,
You don't leave a lot of breadcrumbs. I sort of walked in your social media desert.
You've been stalking me.
Well, I was trying to figure out if I could say who your favorites are, and I would say Rory was, but he was sort of an all-around favorite. It sounds like as a musical leader in the community. So you looked up to him from that point of view, right?
Yeah, because he was probably an Irish person that became
Huge.
world class and was, you know, recognized and respected accordingly. And so was Phil Lynott. I'm a huge Thin Lizzy fan.
Yeah.
I love Thin Lizzy, and I grew up listening to him. And I met Phil Lynott several times, maybe 5-6 times.
Thin Lizzy's biggest hit.
They had many. The Boys Are Back in Town.
Boys Are Back in Town.
Still in Love with You.
Shogo, you know these? Thin Lizzy, Boys Are Back in Town. Frank, you know that? Yeah. I think
Yeah, Whiskey in the Jar.
Yeah.
That was a hit. You know.
huge.
Yeah, and Gary Moore.
How about Rory's big hit?
Bullfrog Blues
Yeah.
comes to mind, but Rory, I couldn't.
He had a jam set, right? I mean, he could play, and yeah.
I mean, he would just go on stage with a kind of a set list, and then it was like every man for himself after 3 or 4 songs.
Right.
Just keep going, and the band would just like hang on in there.
He probably one of those guys who questions the arc of lead guitar soloing or who invented what. I imagine there are a couple of guys who are like, hey, I think I was doing something pretty impressive, right? Or not.
Yeah,
I always wonder, like, if some of these guys feel like they're not historically captured.
I think a lot of those guys, they start with passion for an instrument. So in Rory's case, it was guitar.
Yeah.
And obviously they have influences. And at that time, if you look back at, you know, coming from show bands, because he was kind of a young man when show bands were kind of on the way out.
Right.
And they were trying to find gigs. They wanted to play. So things were changing in the music world anyway. And it was their time. But there wouldn't have been, he would have had a lot of rock influence to begin with. And then he would have heard slide and old Delta stuff. And then he kind of went, you know what?
Got it.
This is what I want to do. Yeah. And whatever he'd learned to that point, then I think that he kind of cultivated that into what it became the legendary Rory Gallagher, and what he was known for in his own style. He found his own way of doing things. And I think if you're playing your natural game, then you have a chance of rising to the top. You know?
And he did.
And he did.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. So you're seeing this, and you admit here earlier you did, you know, aspirations, you know, can I get in the game at a high level? And so you decide to go to Australia when you're 12, or you
I was 21.
Okay. Those are 7 meaningful years in between there. Did you want to go when you were 12? Were you already thinking,
no,
I'm hitting the road, Finglas isn't the place, what am I doing here? I have to get out? Or were you like, Donald, we're going to dominate from the inside out?
No, it kind of came, I think, throughout my apprenticeship. I started it when I was 16, so I would have qualified about when I was 20, around that time.
So can you help me understand the apprenticeship so we sort of get the vibe and the feel of this? Do you leave school, or are you in school as an apprentice? Or because 16 seems to be high school for me, and I have a mandatory thing I got to do in the United States at 16, like every other kid. Math, science, whatever.
Yeah, I think so. I think in Ireland, I don't know what year that is in the States, but when so maybe by 15 you're kind of done, and it's either you go on to university or college or you start an apprenticeship, you take on a trade.
Yeah.
So at 16, that's the right time to basically, you're finished your high school.
Yeah, okay.
So high school finishes there, let's say, and you're going on to college, university, or you're going to like further education, or you're going to start a trade.
Yeah. Okay, that helps, because everything for my, prison break was 18. You got out of high school at 18. You got out of, you got to vote at 18. When I was there, you got to drink at 18. Everything to me was defined by 18. 16 seems reckless. I could drive at 16, but that was about it. No other shenanigans. But that seems like a big decision vortex if you're 16 and you're thinking go forward or trade school for an apprenticeship.
Yeah, but I think also back then that wasn't really, if you were from a working class area, then a trade was a very secure,
for sure,
lifetime choice.
Probably still is.
Yeah, probably, well, and it stood me well because when I went to Australia and applied for residency, I applied under occupational grounds. Yeah, and I had done quite a few courses, so I did courses in electronics, so I got a degree in electronics after because I loved electronics and synthesizers and stuff. So I was always so
you came in through the back door like I'm going to take this thing apart.
It kind of fit. Yeah, I blew up a few train sets in my time. So
key house is on fire.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, and I'm not saying wow or like woe is you. Or I know this sounds ridiculous, but I always get behind when people talk to me about uni and college in the UK and in Australia and even here in Bangkok. So there's some different bright lines of when you're moving to the next level. So you do this, and are you liking it? Is it suiting you, or are you not wanting to hurt your fingers because you're a keyboard player and you're daydreaming all day and you want to play keyboards?
It's a little bit of both. I was already playing professional at that time, and I was touring Ireland with well-known cover bands, and I'd been in a couple of rock bands that were kind of doing their first albums or stuff like that.
Any names you want to call out, or any history that's out there that people could look up if they're a Keith fan, or is it not findable?
Not anything that I'd actually recorded on in Ireland, but I played with a band called Room Service, and they had an album. So
nice.
I was quite impressed that I got a gig with a band that had an album. This was a great achievement.
What label?
And there was a band called Winter's Rain.
Nice.
And they were from my area, and I only did a couple of gigs with them, but they were up and coming as a rock band in the Van Halen kind of.
Oh, so REIGN Rain.
Rain as winter, like the rain of a summer, winter, or
okay. I thought it was like
rain.
The Empire.
No.
Like a metal band, if they're Van Halen. Winter's Rain.
Yeah. It's very.
It was more polite. Winter's Rain. You were just snowy and cold.
I was with another band called Shadowfax. And,
nice.
And
wait, Shadowfax?
That was like prog rock. I was a big Rush fan by that time.
Oh God, were you?
Yeah.
Boy,
Rush
me too.
And Deep Purple and that sort of stuff.
I remember was it Fly By Night that opens with that guitar? That album with the owl on the cover? Jeez, Rush. Fly By Night,
Incredible band.
Temples of Syrinx?
Oh, just everything. Power Windows. When Geddy Lee started playing synthesizers and they just opened this whole album.
Subdivisions,
just incredible. So, and, Exit Stage Left,
Yeah.
Just incredible.
Jeez, I mean,
Tom
really,
Sawyer, all the stuff. We were just.
Yeah, it's funny,
Wow.
A Chong plays after us at Queanbeyan on Saturday nights, and his sweet spot is effectively mine. And I sit and I say, how is it that the same core of music across the genres landed in our laps together at that time? Because I know he was hearing them live away, and it's just
and he's a great musician too.
Right, and the stuff just sort of finds its pocket around the world, right? Like Rush makes its way to all corners, and it may not be as popular in Laos as it is elsewhere, but you find it lines up. The radio did its job, or the business guys did their job of getting it out, or something.
And they were odd,
Right.
There was no box to put them in, but they couldn't be stopped, and people recognized that they were just so incredibly good that they couldn't be ignored. But they weren't commercially viable.
Not at all.
And they really struggled to get their first recording deal.
I mean, the bass jam and Free Will. What was that?
Yeah,
And a 7-minute song that went to number one.
There was I don't know if it was Metallica or one of these bands, but bands used to take them on tour just to hear them.
Yeah.
To figure out
how do we do that?
How are these guys so good? Who thought of this? It was incredible, in an era where, they were the high priests of prog rock, basically. Yeah.
And so that got to you, and it resonated, and you're there. And so that is clearly not your the direction you end up.
No, but it was also with the advent of synthesizers coming on the market, because when I started, we had very analog keyboards. You know, I had the Vox, as I said, and then I bought a RMI electric piano, which was kind of somewhere between a Wurlitzer and a Rhodes. But
would that have like 4 presets? Like
it had 4 or 5 presets. And Stevie Wonder had one. That was the only claim to fame that I'd found one in a shop, and I think I saw Stevie Wonder had one of these. So, and it had these kind of, it wasn't a real piano, but it wasn't quite a Rhodes. It was somewhere in between. So,
it's funny. If I grab my phone right now, the last song of yours that I listened to had a bass in it, and I'm pretty sure you didn't get a bass guitar, so you're doing it with your hand.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I saw Stevie Wonder, and I could actually see what he was doing, and he was on that split Kurzweil contraption that he had, and he was playing bass with his left hand.
Yeah.
And it was a live version of Pretty on Ragged Woman, and I thought, oh my goodness, but what he was, that was the craziest thing I ever saw. I thought, okay, I'm behind the curve for sure.
Stevie Wonder's just incredible. But I think when you're the sole writer, you need to support yourself. So you kind of have to come up with stuff, because only you will know.
Yeah.
You know, but if you're collaborating with somebody and that person happens to be a bass player, then you can just play the rhythm and stuff, which I quite often do, because in my band I've got a bass player, so I tend not to write the bass lines. But if I'm writing a song, then I'll have a very good idea what I want.
Yeah, so this was one of your ambient sounds. It was called Double Something, not Double Vision.
Double Shine.
Double Shine, and it had a bass line in it. Did you play that as a keyboard?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, So are you a good bass player? I mean, so I'm going to back up, because I think your theme was this. If you're doing your thing, you're going to do it all. So you're going to find out how to play drums so you can lay down a track. It's clear you have technical proficiency on Pro Tools or whatever tools you're using to multi-track on your own. You're not calling people over to say, hey, come and do this. You're doing it yourself. So when from 16 to 21, before you go to Australia, at 21, you think you want to compete on the playing field of making money, and jamming, but making money,
very big field,
right? Are you multidisciplinary at that point?
No, I was strictly a keyboard player.
And singing?
No, I didn't sing. I just played keyboards. I never, even to this day, I maybe recently, but even up till pretty much now, I've never really considered myself a singer.
Oh, I got to challenge you on this.
I've got to be a keyboard player first. But over the years, I started singing, and I started writing songs that I could sing, and I started writing lyrics, and then I took some lessons. And
vocal lessons?
Yeah, and I kept at it. And then I started, I don't even know if I can even say I'm a good singer, but I've started to become a singer.
No, you're legit. I created a matrix to measure your vocal progress.
Great, I'm glad.
Franco, when did you start singing? 2, 1?
I think Frank was born with it.
Well, it's funny because 9 brothers. Okay, he's the youngest.
Oh wow.
7th. All right, 7th. So he said he plays bass because it was pushed down. So everyone above him did a superior instrument, and he did bass hit at number 7. So you got singer. But young, right? Long time.
You're lucky they didn't have a ukulele in the back room somewhere.
Yeah, there's one in here. Don't kid yourself. If he goes to a venue and there's a broomstick and a roll of twine, he's gonna go up and play jug bass.
Sorry, Frank. The seven in the family, and all that's left is that.
Go play that, Frank. Figure out how to do it. Yeah, well, that's why we got the pin. Is Frank is stringing him in the back, and he's getting a 4th string in, and I said, I don't think we should change it. Shogo, when did you start singing? When did you start singing? Kid? 10 years old? Okay, you're not a singer. He's going to disavow any knowledge of singing. We're a 3-part harmony band. You can't do that. Yeah, well, that's interesting. So if I'm shocked that you told me that, because I was saying, pardon me for asking, so all y'all maybe we'll splice these in at some point.
To earn
Pardon Me for Asking.
Yeah.
Baby, Please Don't Go, which is, so now we're talking, the first one is your song, I think, right? Pardon Me for Asking?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is an important milestone in terms of my research, I thought. Baby, Please Don't Go, historical, Joe Williams. Who's Been Talking, Howling Wolf. Geez, I just saw you do this the other night. St. Jane's Infirmary Blues, Don Redman and Irving Mills wrote the lyrics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I guessed it, that one. Oreo Cookie Blues, Lonnie Mack.
Yeah.
Your voice, I thought, geez, and I hate when I'm about to do what I'm about to do, but I was like, boy, the only thing I've Spotified recently that had this much variation was some Bowie songs. And I did like Earthling, and then I went to Changes, and I was like, oh, you know, I don't think he ever intentionally set out to do anything that was revolutionary, but it just happened. And his voice, sometimes you're like, is this him? You know, you'd be like, what in the world is he doing? When I did those 5 or 6 songs with yours, I was like, wow, this is a wild range. And I thought, he must have been doing this a long time to be comfortable to do these, because he doesn't have 1,000 of his songs, and I'm sure you can play 1,000,000 of these that are out that are equally meaningful to you. But I thought this, and I know it's unintentional, but it's a wide range for the vocals. Yeah. Agree or disagree?
No, thank you. I started singing in about 95 or 6. I started, and it was really croaky, and I was doing Tom Waits and stuff. That
were you smoking then or drinking?
Yeah, no, I was a smoker. Yeah, and drinking.
So same voices now, deep voice.
Yeah, and it was kind of the husky and the growly stuff that I was doing was only a cover. Really, it was really only a cover because I wasn't a good singer.
Yeah, I get it.
You know, and I didn't have a range. I didn't have a high range, and it was later. In fact, this is quite a funny story because in Vietnam I started to learn how to speak some Vietnamese, and I really loved being there. And I was doing gigs, and that's kind of where I took on this whole, you know, if I'm going to survive in Asia,
lounge singer,
I'm going to have to really learn how to be an engineer. Actually, that's where I cut my teeth on doing music for TV commercials and stuff, because a lot of money was going to Vietnam at that time, because all the brands were emerging in Vietnam. So there was Coke and Pepsi and Nescafe and Pond's, and that for the first time there was money going there, and they needed music for TV commercials, and that's kind of an industry I really wanted to evolve and kind of succeed in, and be not just a musician in a band, but also produce. I really wanted to write film score stuff. Yeah,
interesting.
And kind of, you know.
Yeah.
But I didn't know really how to go about it, other than I've always been able to compose. I could sit down now and just write something.
Right, which is maybe 90% of the effort. You just got to find out who to go say, hey, I can do whatever you want.
And not everything I was writing had a purpose,
right,
or a home, a place to go. But I kind of and with the advent, I think I was trying to say this earlier.
Okay, sorry,
got off track. But
I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, I wasn't. It was much earlier. With the advent of technology and Logic and Pro Tools and stuff being virtual and being able to work on a computer, when that started happening, I happened to be in the right place at the right time. Where, you know, when I was growing up, if you had a song, you had to save a lot of money or borrow money and go to the studio and demo it if you wanted to capture it.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and now I can think something, I can, you know, think, write, record it, and if I'm clever with instruments and I don't need too much live instruments, I can bring a guitar player in or something, and I can do the artwork and I can release it from my home. Yeah,
that's awesome.
And put it online. Yeah. And that's it. It's
unlike a release. All this, right?
Like most of the stuff. Yeah. Other than my blues album, which has taken, you know, nearly 6 years to my new blues album to complete, because, you know, COVID and stuff like that. But my point is, if you want to kind of produce a lot of it, and you have a lot of ideas. So I make a lot of, like, as you saw, like sci-fi music, because I was influenced by Brian Eno, and I thought one day, how does he do it? You need all this stuff and a recording studio, which I didn't have access to. Yeah. And it was cost a fortune. But now, with all these VST instruments and Logic and new versions and processing, you can just buy those synthesized. So you just need a controller keyboard, and then you have access to everything.
Samples. Yeah, don't you feel like a little bit of a traitor? I mean, hasn't this had a psychological impact of like, I can't be doing this. I'm doing this. This can't be right. Well, it's right. This can't work for me. Well, I'm selling it. And it's just sort of giving in to these forces where it used to be this Roland Juno 60 is sacrosanct. I can make that car sound, you know? Like, and now I can play car songs. Like, what? And now all that's sort of, okay, whatever. You know, it's.
Yeah. I think, I think certain stuff has its purpose.
Yeah.
For example, my blues album, there's no electronica other than my keyboards, you know, or whatever.
What are you playing on it?
So we have real drums, real bass, real guitars, real slide playing.
What keyboard? You doing a piano with the mic, or are you doing?
It's funny because I guide track everything with my Nord. I have a Roland RD 700, also an NX, and a Nord stage. So, and I have some MIDI controller keyboards. But strangely, to use a real piano in the studio might not give me the sound I want.
Yeah, of course.
But if I play all the guide tracks, and then I will go and re-record once we do everything to a click. Yeah. But it will be real live performance.
Yeah. Is that 88, the Nord 88 keys, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the first one, the stage.
Geez, the Roland action. I mean, we got one right behind you there, but I get the Phantom G8. Is that sampler thing they put out a decade or two ago? It's just, they feel so good, right? To play.
Yeah, I've tried a Phantom, but I don't know that much about it.
Yeah, but the one you used on stage last night, or this, it's just interesting. So so 95 Pro Tools comes out. You're an early adopter. You're getting in. You're in Australia.
Yeah.
Are you just making money off of playing, and then you come to Vietnam with a new idea, or do you start doing ads in Australia and seeing the upside of your skills?
In Australia, I was working as an electrician and playing at night.
Okay. Which was more profitable?
Well, together, they made a good living, basically. But and back then, you could make a good living, and it wasn't that expensive to live and rent and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I was busy. I was kind of worked my way up in the scene there. So, and I was kind of growing as a musician too. So now I'm in my early 20s. Life is fantastic. I'm in Australia. The weather's great. I'm earning good money as an electrician. And I'm buying better keyboards and, you know, and I'm starting to get into bands and play. So that took a few years to kind of work my way up and play with musicians that were also
world class,
and then, you know, I got to record a few albums, but I wasn't sound engineering. I was going to studios and watching engineers do it. It wasn't until I got to Vietnam and with a band I was touring with from Australia, went to Vietnam to play Australia Day. And when I got there, I was like, oh, this is fantastic. So I went back to Melbourne. I was still playing, and then in '95, I thought, you know what? I think I've done this to death now, and I'm at this kind of not level, but stalemate of whereas I was kind of I was kind of stuck on that step, and I thought, you know, maybe Vietnam would be good and I'd kind of had my first experience in Asia, and I loved it. You know, I thought the energy, the vibe, Asia was alive and kicking. I thought I want to be part of this. Yeah, and that's when I kind of started working in studios and learning how to engineer stuff for myself.
In Australia first, or in Vietnam?
In Vietnam.
Yeah. So in
Australia, I was strictly a hire as a keyboard player.
Did you feel that you were learning from that though? Like you had to spend your 1,000 hours in the studio watching the pros go at it, or guys who were getting paid.
Yeah, and find people that would share some of their knowledge and time, and kind of not feel that you were trying to take their job.
Right.
And people would show you, and you'd kind of ask questions and show me how to do this. And it wasn't done really until probably in Bangkok, when I got to Bangkok in 2000, that I got an iMac, and that's when I installed Logic, and when I had access to my own system for the first time. So thank you, Apple.
Yeah.
Logic.
So was your digital transformation sort of 95, 96-ish?
Yeah, for sure.
And
we were using Cubase and Pro Tools in Vietnam, but I wasn't operating it. I was just kind of directing and producing and composing, of course, but but it was all very analog and
yeah, and then that just goes away.
yeah, and it all kind of just disappeared along with a lot of very expensive hardware.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I mean, and it doesn't mean the experience went away, but certainly when you look at your average high school student learning computer sciences now, it's 1,000 times more advanced than.
Yeah, and what kids have access to now, and they're kind of, the generation of kids now they're born with
GarageBand,
and mobile phones and computers and processing.
Yeah. So funnily enough, you go to Vietnam to get your first doses of that, and so you get the production bug, or at least you say, hey, that's a space where I could have more versatility in terms of making my own stuff, but also producing product. Yeah. And so you do commercials and you start to get the jingle down. I saw one that I thought sounded very awesome, and it was sort of a mashup. Jima?
Yeah, Jima Water.
Yeah, so that's a later example of what you were learning or developing in the 90s and aughts.
Yeah, well, Jima, I think that was done in Bangkok.
Yeah.
So I was already in Thailand at that point.
Right, and so that's the current manifestation of, which was pretty awesome. I mean, it's a 45 or it's a minute jingle. Or I'm going to call it a jingle. I don't know what the hell I'm saying. It's a minute song, and it has a classic theme, and I forget what it was
like a tango, and there was 3 pieces mashed together. It was extremely difficult because it was all,
and then the animation
hard to do because it was
bonkers.
Yeah,
like water figures.
Yeah, and that's CGI with Bink and those guys. They were incredibly good. That's one of the hardest things to do is to make stuff look like water, make water do things. So that was a.
Well, it was also timed to the song you had too, so it's or not. Maybe it's just serendipity that it lined up, but it was pretty. I mean, that seems like motion picture stuff, right? That seems like whatever Lucas has left us with in the IMAX room, right? It's like, holy cow!
I was when that job came in, I was like, oh great, this will be good. And then when I saw the brief and they told me what they wanted, I was like,
oh my.
How am I going? Where am I going to start? With this, because the music was like, not that it was unfamiliar, but it was kind of. And I brought a Russian violinist.
Yeah, I was going to say,
there's incredible. Who's actually the bass player, a jazz bass player, but he was a master violinist, right? And I called him up. His name is Alex. He's so funny. I said, hey, I've got this TV commercial, and I think I really need your help. And then there's a saxophone player, an English guy, who was playing around Bangkok at that time too. But he happened to be an incredibly good flamenco guitarist.
Go figure.
But it wasn't his real gig.
Yeah.
So 2 people that played on this on that track for me, both of them, their main gig was completely different instruments. But they were masters of the other, but didn't do it live.
Yeah, go figure, right?
And I think, and I did all the strings and pads, and I'm not sure if those.
Did you do them at home, or did you go to a studio? Did that afford you? Did they say, "Hey, we'd love for you to save us some cash, but we got the studio for you"? And you're like,
"No." At that point, I had opened a company.
Okay, so.
Do this for us. Partner. So we were actually in business. I had opened a studio in Soi 47.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And we had like soundproof rooms, and we actually had equipment, and we were working on PC at that time. So we were using one of the first generations of Nuendo.
Okay.
And so that was all.
Okay, so that's an example. And then you have another video in your gosh, I forgot what this thing is, and I'm embarrassed to do this in front of everyone, but I'm going to do it. The Bandcamp. There's the race car sample that you have that obviously you're selling tires or a car thing or something, but it's really so it sounds cool. I mean, it's just a cool sounding commercial, right?
Yeah. So that's MRF, right?
Yeah.
So MRF, and I'm embarrassed to say I had no idea who they were, but they are the biggest or second biggest in the world manufacturer of racing car tires.
Behind Pirelli?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or up there with.
Right.
They were massive, and I had no idea at the time.
God bless you guys. Shout out to MR.
Yeah. And So that job came in, and I was excited about that because it was really cool. The graphics were cool. You know, the people we were working with
It's
were
sonic.
cool. Yeah.
Engine noises, cars screeching.
Yeah. So at that point, I pretty much got a full Hollywood library of SFX. And I had collected sound design from different programs, different CDs you could get with magazines at the time, and downloaded, and those CDs you could buy. So it was very kind of analog at that time. There was no download or streaming.
Right.
Now you can get all that same stuff. You can subscribe to
Right.
companies, and you can just, if I want a bell for a bike, or you want shoes walking in the snow, leather shoes, or you want stuff for, sound design for film, it's all there. You just subscribe and you type in what you need, and, it gives you lots of versions of it.
Right.
So, but at this time, we had to collect stuff, and I had a very, very big Hollywood library of everything from natural sound, household stuff, to sci-fi sound effects. So I had to create all that.
How is that? I mean, so you're in Australia, you're glass ceiling in Australia, you want to compete, and then you're starting this new craft métier technical thing, and you find yourself 7 days in a row rating the catalogs of things online to take sounds out for your sound bank, which is starting to be pretty far removed from playing Howling Wolf.
Yeah. And and the reason for that is because at this point, it was a business.
Yeah.
So I'd invested in a business.
Yeah, okay.
And I still loved playing music, which was my passion. So I had to keep that alive.
Yeah.
But I also had staff, and I had a company.
Yeah.
And we had rent. So it was kind of very scary. It's like, then I had to go out and be a business guy and network with advertising agencies and get jobs in the door.
Be a suit.
That was really hard, yeah.
Do you regret that move?
No, I mean, I learned a lot about business, and I kind of learned a lot about the industry, and learned to sort of survive in that business for several years. And again, your life changes so many times. I mean, the industry just changed, and the rug just gets pulled out from under you. Companies were sprouting up all over the place. The money was going down for what you could charge, and people were doing it for a third of the price, and undercutting you.
Yeah.
And it got so boring and competitive. Eventually, I said to my business partner, I really don't want to do this. All I want to do now is just take jobs for composition only.
Right.
And
music composition for commercials or sounds, or a hotel that wants to have their own personalized ambient sounds.
That happened later, out of, coming out of one sort of industry, thinking, well, I love making this music. I'm going to make it anyway. And then if I can sell it, bonus, or if I can sell it online, people, maybe if I make enough music, then somebody will find a track that they want to use in a film or something. Yeah. So it was kind of just trial and error at that point.
Yeah. Do you feel, and I'm not when I asked you, did you regret it? It's the move away from music, I guess, that I was saying. Did you regret, or did you? And you're not even moving away from it because it's part and parcel. But it's now in this digital era, so probably even your electrical understanding is undergoing a transformation, right? Or your
oh yeah, I mean,
your trade.
Yeah, the trade got left behind when I was about 26. I mean, I don't even know if I know how to change a light bulb anymore.
But you could have gone into, Kurzweil wiring, or, circuitry making, or like getting the 5,000 samples into that chip, I would think is an unnatural extension of that craft, right?
Sure. And I was very interested in electronics. And while I was in Australia, I did lots of further advanced electronics courses, which gave me a degree in electronics. But it's like I'm cursed to be a live musician. So as long as I live, I want to go out and play blues. Yeah. I want to go and be amongst other great musicians, and I want to feed off each other. And when it's like a curse. It's like last night I went out to see. I had a night off, so I went to see some friends, and they were there, and they got me for a jam, and I had a ball. Just for those couple of songs, just because you can't buy
Yeah.
that experience.
Yeah.
And if you're fortunate enough to play long enough and meet other people, and you're invited to play a couple of songs with
Right.
them, and you can bring something to the table, then it rewards you for doing it.
Yeah.
And you can't get that in another job, being an electrician or whatever. You can really dig being an electrician, and I did for a long time, and I love
Yeah.
the trade, but
Yeah, and I'm not putting it down. I mean, I'm not.
No,
I'm
of
just
course
saying
not.
here you have crossroads. Stay in Dublin or go. You have crossroads. You have a skill and you have a passion to play, and you're doing both. And then, sort of the nature of both is undergoing radical transformation, and you're making decisions, and you hop on to the synthesizer thing, and it suits you well, and you adapt to the actionless keyboard and stuff, and the 24 key keyboard that does
it's
more.
kind of like, okay, I think I'm going to smash. I think my M1 I had to take to repair so many times because I was so heavy-handed with it from playing. I had a Yamaha CP70B, you know those big electric baby grands?
Yeah.
I had one of those. I had a Rhodes, Stage Rhodes 88 for a while, and B3, had a Hammond B3 for a while too.
Yeah.
And these things are monsters, and you really have to play into them.
Yeah.
And to get something from it.
Yeah.
And oh my God, it was like Tinseltown getting keyboards that were just not weighted.
Yeah, but then so then electronics drifts off into this new sort of required. You need to know 5 or 6 crafts to get this one thing going, which is sound production for videos or for movies or whatever, and you need to have enough, in particular since you're the producer, to hold these 5 streams together, right?
Yeah.
The look, the sound, the feel, the storage, the
Yeah. And I think not to interrupt you, but
no, please.
What it comes down to in life, I think there's everybody's got passions, and I think when you have a passion for something, that's what will get you through the hard times, but you also have to prioritize.
Yeah.
And at these different times in my life, I've had to prioritize, and I've always had to pay rent. I've always had to pay bills. So you kind of think, well, how can I do this and retain what I love and what I'm most passionate about whilst earning a living?
Yeah.
And while playing music can provide it doesn't provide it as well as you might need, And I think for me, it's always been finding balance and try to improve myself all the time. I'm always trying to learn something or, write better, sing better. And I also have to manage and keep my band afloat, keep it working.
Yeah.
And, I work with some really good musicians. So if you want to keep that moving, you have to provide. But I also have to provide for myself. So over the years, I've tried to learn enough skills. So if somebody needs a piece of music, I can compose it, I can record it, I can deliver it myself without relying on other people's studios and stuff like that. So I still have to use other people's studios sometimes, but I do have a home setup now where I can pretty much...
That's the big sort of singularity now, right? Is you can stay off the grid. I mean, you can... it's not, hey, this is awesome, we're going to spend a week at the studio.
That's right.
Eating pizza and, letting the mixer do his thing. Now it's like, I can do all this at home.
Yeah. I recently went to Karma Studios down in
I've never seen
Chumbury.
that. Yeah.
So, and we didn't actually track everything at Karma, but it was a Karma job, kind of, and I was working with...
So could you give us a little history on Karma? I've read about it.
Well, I don't know that much.
Super
but
awesome place.
I know Chris that owns it, and they are great studios. So next to it, they have a 5-bedroom house where they house a lot of the musicians, and then you go back and forth to the studio. But there's an Australian artist I was asked to play on an album, so he flew to Thailand to write. I think they had a few songs already, but they hadn't written the whole album. So I was part of the writing, and I was part of definitely the keyboard player for this project.
That's fun.
And that was nice because it doesn't happen so often. Now people from anywhere will get in touch and say, for example, there was a reggae band in Krabi, and my friend Simon was managing them and recording their album. So he'll just send me a file and say, here's the track, can you play some keys on this, or Hammond or whatever it was at the time. And I do it at home and I send it back to him. He goes, yeah, that's great. Can you give me a second version with a different outro and try this in this section? Yep, okay, great. I go back. A couple of hours later, I send it back to him. He goes, great. And great job done. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So going to a real studio with outboard gear and having pizza and hanging out with the musicians and actually playing stuff that's going to go to tape, or digitally, so to speak. That's great. You really feel like, because that's where I came from. So you kind of really feel you're doing stuff. You're doing it for real.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think that's what I was driving at. And I think this fits into a theme you and I were talking about when we walked up here. You're an expat at the road. You're an expat on the road after all. This is, you've made 10 and 5 and several years of transitions. And so, Australia, Vietnam, and here at different years per stop, but it's more than your time in Dublin now. so roughly,
I've officially been away from my home country longer than I've lived.
Right, and so and you've become extremely independent. If you think about it, all the things that you left needing help with are now eradicated, and you can do on your own. Or you may not be the world's greatest at left-hand bass playing while you're playing something else, but you're damn good. So you're doing it, and it's just all this stuff just amasses, right? And but it's resulting in sort of further and further isolation, unless, right? Because you can do it at home. And I always am amazed at how insular and discreet the music industry has become for industry folks, as opposed to live performers that have amassed a fortune and are able to move out and about in large ways, like Taylor Swift. I imagine her life is unbelievable when you're around it, and she has a lot of latitude to do whatever she wants. But for working bands and working musicians and stuff, it seems like this really does get pushed. And my first recollection of hearing that was, I remember when Eddie Van Halen said, I never played with Michael Jackson. I sent him a copy, and you can hear at the end how out of tune that last note is on Beat It. And
that's right. He wanted to change that, and they said, no, you're not going to touch anything because,
And it's funny how, the musician you were when you left Dublin is very different. And now you have a million different skill sets.
Yeah, and I think my attitude obviously has, changed since I was a young buck, kind of wanting to challenge the world. And
right.
I was going to become something, and you'll hear my name.
Okay, but we know your name.
But it's very local. But I have to say, and I am grateful because, and I think what I'm trying to say is, I remember hearing John Mayer say in a short interview, which I thought was very, very cool, because I really hadn't heard anybody kind of put it this way before. And he kind of similarly started out on a similar journey where he wanted to be a singer-songwriter and play, and he became a very accomplished musician. So that in itself is a great,
achievement.
Achievement. So, and he'd actually said, if you don't put a bar that says, I'm going to achieve this. So people say, when you ask your musician, what do you want to be? And they say, well, we want to be famous. We want to go viral. He goes, well, what does that mean to you? So they don't set it. So you're always going to be disappointed because you will never achieve those things. And if you do, it's really, you're going to be super lucky. But if you say, okay, if we can sell 100 T-shirts or sell 500 CDs, or if we hit 100,000 followers, 10,000 followers, let's say, start at 10. We're going to go to a Japanese restaurant. I'm going to share sushi. We're going to celebrate it.
Right.
Then it's a win.
Yeah, win. Yeah.
And you can meet that.
Yeah.
If you can meet those goals, and if you set your goals and prioritize them, we're going to try and hit this market, and not just willy-nilly think, I want to be famous.
Yeah.
So I think now at my age now, I can relax and kind of think, you know what, actually, I always wanted to be on an album, be asked to be on an album. I've always wanted to look at the TV and say, "Oh my God, I did the music for that, and it's
Right,
on
right.
television. That's great."
Yeah,
So I've
yeah.
done that.
Yeah.
You know, I want to start a band and have my own band, play music I love, and write some songs. I've done it.
Yeah.
I got to play with some very famous and accomplished bands, and some I recorded with and some I just toured with. And I think this is great. I've done it. I've done that. I've set out to do, because I've put a goal, and it's achievable. So I think every step, on, you know, as long as I continue to do what I'm doing, I'm grateful, and I see it as a small achievement.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important if you're starting out in music, to kind of be realistic about what you're trying to achieve, and do it within what you know, the skills you're learning, and the new industries, and because things change around you.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't survive the change. They don't know how to move forward. They can't develop new skills, and you really have to, because even now, things are changing super fast.
Yeah, that's good points, and I think that'll be the soundbite. I mean, I think it's important to hear from your journey, you know, what you think of it at this point, because you are, by any definition, the region's top keyboard player, and can do what you want to do. You can play what you want to play. You know, that's not everyone's. I remember this. I was at the 930 Club in Washington, D.C. once, and all the monitors went out on stage from some type of rainstorm power surge. And the lead guitarist and vocalist was looking for help. His bandmates were all unplugged, and he tried to play a Beatles song, and he got halfway through, and he stopped, and I thought, he doesn't have a song he can play. I thought, you know, if Keith was up there, he could go for 10 hours, and he'd, you know, maybe need a water break or something, but maybe he'd even do it alphabetically from New Orleans over. But then I want to play this. So we played this earlier, and so I'm going to try this. Frank, we'll put this one on. So this is called Funky Clav Madness. So we've just talked about you as developing your blues and jazz skills and rock and other skills to play, and live bands, big bands, solo, do the whole thing. And I have Funky Clav Madness off of your Bandcamp page, which has 70 or so different things. And this was the first one I clicked on. I don't know why. So this is all you, right?
Yep.
In your home studio?
Yep.
On the computer?
Okay. Logic, basically, yeah.
All right. So we'll show where this is in the Funky Clav Madness. How do you get here? So you come from Vietnam, you learn some skills, you bring it here, and you are, and then to go further into this, if we went to your Spotify page, the item that has the most number of hits, or views or listens, and it doesn't matter to the purpose of this discussion, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't have a drum track or a beat that's discernible. And it is so far afield from when I saw you play last week. You know, it's just,
Yeah.
and you're doing this, and you're doing a lot of them, and they're varied and they're awesome. And so you have this thing, it's a new, I mean, this did not exist when you started in Finglas, right? I mean,
No, and as I said, if you had an idea, you'd have to save a fortune or borrow money and go to a studio and say, and I didn't even have those sort of keyboards back then.
Right.
But today, with the advent of technology and VST instruments and companies that are making, amazing sounds and keyboard sounds and synths and stuff, it's easier.
Yeah.
And I think over the years, if you've developed some sort of skill set that you understand a little bit about drums, and now you've got drum loops and drum programs,
right.
you can make beats or things,
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because you have a series, and I have a feeling it's more robust than I saw, as the Guitar Cottonmouth Blues Band, but you also had a series of lessons that you give. So improvising on piano without sheet music. You go, you say, hey, F major 7, E minor 7, D minor 7, C major 7, and you go through these lessons. And so it's clear as you're sort of manhandling these technologies, your skill sets are developing on display. It's a very strange thing to watch a senior musician to do. Like, hey, and some of it I would guess was during COVID, and you were probably looking for stuff like,
Yes.
how can I
Yeah.
do this? But I
Yeah.
thought, wow, this is really interesting because you've not only embraced it, but you sort of mastered the technology that people would accuse you of being an old fuddy-duddy and not being aware, but you're out ahead of the curve on this right now, as far as I can tell. And I'm thinking, what an awesome transformation.
Thank you. But I think, yeah, it was COVID, and it was pretty scary, and I had a lot of time,
We all
and
did.
everything shut down. And one day, you look out the window and the streets are empty,
Yeah.
and there's no work. And lucky, I had my computer and speakers, and I had my little home studio set up. So I thought, how am I going to survive this? What am I going to do? And there was no, I wasn't being, I couldn't go out singing. The band was,
Yeah.
basically
Right.
over for a while.
Yeah.
And I thought, and I actually, some of them I didn't want to do because I didn't want to be facetious and think, who do you think you are teaching people? Who are you? What, you're not even
course.
qualified to do this. But I decided, because I did study classical and I did up to
it's
seventh
obvious.
grade or so. And I thought, I do play stuff my own way. And then if I can give people some, and I know what it's like, how frustrating it is to want to play keyboards. And if you see someone like me or somebody else and you think, and I see guys that are way much better than me, I think, I want to be able to do that. How does he do that? How can I get there?
Yeah.
And I think if somebody else is watching me or watching somebody else and thinking, how can I get there? The learning curve is so hard at the beginning.
Yeah.
I wanted to get people over that because I went through it. So I thought, I devised these kind of finger exercises which would get people playing faster.
Yeah.
Not speed-wise, but get you to a point where you feel like, I'm playing something here.
Yeah.
And show people, some finger structures
Right.
and finger exercises that doesn't wear you down and get you frustrated. That you
Right,
can
right.
actually feel like you're accomplishing something. But if you get to that point and you have passion, you can get to the next level,
Yeah.
get
It's,
to the next point. So that was something I had time to do in COVID, and I thought, I'm going to share stuff. But I kind of wasn't sure if I should, because people would say, that's
who are
terrible.
you to teach us?
Who do you think you are? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's in line with your character, though. I'm going to Australia. I'm going to Vietnam. I'm going to do a video. And at this point, you had several other things that I thought you did extremely well. You had your podcast, you had a podcast. You've had two sort of things that I really think I appreciate, and I would thank you for doing here in Bangkok, which was sort of your series of interviews that you did we talked about at the Wine Connection.
Yeah.
Were there two names for that location, or just the one, Beyond the Lines?
Yeah, Beyond the Lines.
Yeah, and so mutual friends I've seen on there, and some folks I didn't know.
Yeah.
Was that attractive to you, or and I think you told me earlier it became a lot of work to produce that, probably because of the time it came out in, right? Lots of equipment, lots of gear, lots of stuff. You need a space.
Yeah, and you had to schedule again. Scheduling everything, and I had to
Transportation in Bangkok, food.
And I didn't actually want to be the presenter of that show. What I did want to do was do the music, because I had several other shows at the time I was doing music for, and so I had a lot on my plate. And I actually had a friend of mine, James Newman, who I wanted to be the presenter, and the
host, the interviewer.
Yeah. And I just wanted to sit back and do the music because, and they said, no, you have to do it because, I had done a music one and they really liked it, and it was kind of my concept, and I knew, but I was like, okay. So I ended up doing it, but it's a lot of work. So, but
is it different being on that stage for you? Being on the speaking stage like this and a camera and interviewing people than playing?
Yeah, because I had no experience as being a host for a TV show of any sort. I was always behind the scenes or doing the music for a show, but I'd never actually been a TV presenter before.
Were you dragged into that then? Like, looking back, would you say, it was fun, I did it, I met these people, but I really didn't want to do it?
No, this show ended up being good, and I did start enjoying it, and the people I met were super interesting, and I'm still friends with a lot of them today because of it. and I knew who they were too.
Yeah.
So, but it was kind of not something I had done before. So, but I had conceptualized it because when I saw the company I was working with, and actually Bangkok Post were moving into the online world.
Right.
They invested in it with a company called Capital TV, who I was doing music for their TV shows already. And when I looked at all the programs, the new programs that I was going to do music for them, I thought, well, this is the Bangkok Post, and this is all inward looking at the cool things in Thailand.
Yeah.
But you don't have a book show. There's so many great writers out there that could really use the exposure.
Yeah.
And it would make for really good TV. And it's they have markets in their prospective countries, and people interested in the noir crime world, underworld of Asia and Thailand specifically, Bangkok specifically. And they were like, oh, that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Why don't you do it? And I said, well, why don't I find you a host to do it? Because I'll just do the music.
Yeah.
And so I did ask my friend, and I had pegged him for that job, but they knocked it back and just said, no, you have to do it.
That's funny. I mean, think of that, right?
But my friend was the first guy I did interview.
Yeah.
And that was quite fun. Oh, that's so funny. That was a funny one. So, so I ended up doing it, and it was fun for a while, but after a while, the budgets got pulled to continue it, and I didn't really want without support and the sort of crew, because it's so much planning and so much work.
It is, right?
And then it involves a lot of editing and stuff after there. Plus, I had to do the music for it as well. So I kind of didn't want to continue it without that support, because a lot of people were still sending me stuff saying, hey, can I do an interview? Can I come on the show? And I said, actually, I'm not doing the show anymore, but I have a Facebook page. If you send me a link to your stuff, I'll still put it out. So I continued to do that for a while, but I didn't really want to go out and do all the interviews myself without
I guess I get that. I mean, it's a lot of work, right? And you're doing these other things, in particular production. So it's taking up time, bulks of time that you are 5 times more efficient if you're working alone at home on some.
That's right. I was like, I just simply didn't have the capacity to take on that as well.
I'm sorry, I'm looking over here. I wanted to pull up quickly your YouTube channel, and I know there's a couple of different places where you reside, but you've also, have you produced other artists?
Yes.
Yeah.
I recently worked with a lovely Vietnamese girl artist, female singer called Gong An.
Was that Change My Number? No.
Yes, it's called Delete.
Delete My Number.
Yeah, this just called. Yeah.
That's a beautiful sounding song.
Yeah. And that was, I met her in Bangkok. She's friends of Thai musician friends of mine, indie artists here. And we stayed in touch, and I helped her get some gigs. And she messaged one day and said, hey, I've got some original songs. Would you be interested in, producing me?
Huh.
And I was like, okay, send me something and let me have a listen first. And for a 6-year-old, I think she's 26, the song was really good. And it was quite young and modern.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is a really good song. I said, what do you want to do? And she goes, well, I'll leave that to you. She says, what do you want to do? So she literally sat in her room with her phone, and she played guitar and sang the song to me.
Nice.
And she said, that's all I've got. I was like, okay.
You ever done something like that before?
Not exactly like that. I've worked with other artists in different ways, but I was like, okay. I said, leave it with me for a few days. So I agreed to work with her. And I thought she was genuine, and I thought the song was really good. And she had other songs as well. So I thought, okay, this will be a challenge for me also. And I had a deep love and connection to Vietnam anyway. Yeah. So it was nice if I could produce something from there too. So I recreated the song. I took it, I imported it into Logic, and I recreated the whole thing. And put it in time and everything like that. And I redid the guitars, and then I wrote a bass line, and then I kind of come up with a new arrangement based on what she'd given me.
Nice.
And then I sent her a draft of that with drums and bass and keyboards and everything, and she loved it. She was like, "Wow, this is like my song. Wow, I can't believe it." So I said, "You're going to have to sing to the new track now." So I sent her an instrumental version, and she sang on it, but the sound wasn't really that good, and but we had a demo now of where we were going in a direction. So we agreed on a lot of things, and I did some more versions of it, and I think 6 or 8 versions we worked through. And then she had a lot of ideas because this was her first time out, kind of also producing her song. She was excited about it. And so we got to a place where we had finally a finished version of this song. And I said, well, to do this right, you're going to have to come to Bangkok and sing it here because what you're sending me isn't going to cut it.
Yeah.
She goes, okay. So she flew over, and I took her to Studio 28.
Nice.
And I was working with Shane, a friend of mine, a producer there. And I brought all the tracks, and we did the whole thing. And from the vocal microphone, U887, I think, Sony, to the desk, vocal chain, $45,000 worth of stuff. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And there's 13 layers of vocals.
Yeah, nice.
13 tracks, 13 or 14, and a couple of, I think it was 13 or 15 in total, but 13 tracks of vocals. And there was like subs, there was unisons, there was thirds, there was fifths, and then there was cutaways. And the vocal sound is huge.
Yeah, it is.
So we spent, and it's super expensive. So we actually tracked two songs. She has a second song which is really good, but we didn't get to finish it because we ran out of time and we needed to concentrate on that song. So while we were in the studio, we started being inspired by the sound, and this had developed over months basically. And so she had an idea to open with some ambient synth sounds and let's chill and all the and then all these new influences were coming in. I'm like, we've already written the song. We're here just to let's get this done, and but she was quite forceful.
Did you tell her, by the way,
she's the artist.
That's my expertise, ambient sounds now, if you'd
but
like.
it was kind of let's call it a collaboration.
Yeah, of course.
But it turned out to be good because I was learning something, and I've learned to respect people when they have an idea.
Yeah.
And she really did, and she worked so hard. I respected that about her. Otherwise, I would have shut it down and said, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
And this is costing a lot of money. So, but she's intelligent, smart, and she had relevant ideas. And if you have ideas that are relevant to what's going on, then I'll listen.
Yeah.
So we did, and we had come up with the versions, and we finished it, and it sounded absolutely amazing.
Nice.
So then when we went back, she went home, and then we booked in for the following month to do the final mix and the mastering. And she couldn't come over for that, so she was just calling in on video to the studio. And she's like, I think the song is too long. She's coming short in the ending. I'm like, well, the ending's it's all kind of worked out already. It needs to be shorter. I'm like, okay, let me see what I can do. This is our final mix.
Yeah.
We need to take the second verse out. I'm like, then you're not really telling the story. You're gonna have a gap.
All right. Do you take the number out or not in the second verse?
Yeah. It's like, well, what happened? She goes, but she was.
Yeah.
And I was like, I said, we're going to have to cut the session now because we can't mix anything. If you're going to change the structure, this is a structural change. This is not just, can you add, banjo or string line? This is like structural. So we have to stop. Yeah, she goes, well, I really think we need to do it. So what I learned, and we did this, and we went back and then we did a final mix, and it is the song you have there too.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. I really like.
Yeah, it's a very good
what
song.
we ended up with, but there was a lot of back and forth, and a lot of I will say hesitation and sort of what's the word?
Yeah, professional differences that may say, I can't produce this anymore because I think you're going in the wrong direction. I mean, and you didn't do that, and that's not what you were thinking, but in the abstract, that's the opposition. It's George Martin saying, Paul, we're bringing strings in to Eleanor Rigby. And he's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it was kind of like that. And it was such a big structural change.
Yeah, like,
so there was a lot of, there was a lot of aversion from me. But in the end, what I learned is her generation, and she was very smart. She knew in her young wisdom that her market didn't have the attention span needed to get to the chorus.
The 5-minute version.
Yeah. Well, it's still only 3 minutes or something. Okay. So it was, but she needed it to be shorter because she know, and if things didn't happen, literally every second or third bar. Yeah. So she would say, like, take that snare out. We don't need that because, so there would be structural changes like this. Yeah. But she knew that she would lose them because so much information was coming to the people who listen to her music so fast and that are waiting. Yeah. There's so many other artists backed up in line waiting to get to them that she already knew. And I thought that was really clever, and I thought that was really smart and mature of her, and it was something I hadn't really thought about at that time.
Because you and I like YYZ by Rush, right? The fourth jam is essential to we need to hear Geddy's last rip on the bass.
That's right.
We're going to overkill this one. We're going to have the Freebird solo, 64 measures instead of 32.
Yeah, that's right. And
we were,
Bohemian Rhapsody almost didn't make it. In fact, they were told this was not going to happen.
And you're the producer. Yeah. You're certainly capable of all the other things too, but now you're in that conflicted role of.
So I was humbled, and and I have a lot of respect for him. We still work together to this day. So you learn, something, and you have to be willing to risk it all. Yeah, and she would, and I respect that about her and other artists that I've worked with. That if as I said, if it's relevant but I learned a lot from that session. And what we ended up with, because I added some new stuff because I was inspired by a new version. So I didn't just shut down and say, that's not happening, I'm out of here. Right. Go get somebody else.
Which you could have done.
Which,
probably has been done to us.
Yeah,
sure. You're an idiot. You're all eating too much pizza. Get in here.
You don't know anything.
Get out of my studio. Yeah. Wait, it's fun back here. We're going just 6 more hours.
But I'm the artist. Yeah, not really.
Get outside. Well, I don't want to cut this off. Let's finish with this. Let's talk about your new album or the album. Yeah. So I felt like, pardon me for asking, was a trial balloon that had broken loose and was floating and was going to catch up with its mates somewhere. Yeah. And I thought, wow, this is good. And, so this actually, lyric, did you come down here to give me hope, lift me up, if I were to read it without singing it. Yeah. Just a great line. And I thought, oh, wait a minute. If this is a Keith lyric, I would rather hear this than Who's Been Talking. And I'm thinking, interesting. I wouldn't have thought. I would have thought he would have gone for vocal sound over something else, but solid lyrics, don't worry about it. Solid lyrics, great song, great sounding song.
Thank you.
All produced by you, drums,
No, I was working
saxophone.
So
no piano jam, by the way, right?
No. And it was just a song, and it wasn't written for the album. I just wrote the song, and I had worked quite a long time on it, and I was really happy. And it took me a while to write those lyrics, and I was very happy with what I'd come up with, and the song itself as a song, and the arrangement. I was really, really happy with it. So it was supposed to be sort of a ballad, not necessarily a blues or soul ballad, but that's kind of the area it's
Check.
in. Yeah. And the melody, I was happy with everything, and I thought this is a good song. Not because I wrote it, but just that it came from me. But I was really happy about how it came out. And a friend of mine, Stefan, a producer, he did a lot of film score stuff, and I'd quite often would catch up and have coffee, and I'd go over to his place, or he'd come over to my place, and he offered to record a couple of my songs. And there's another one called "I Believe in Angels" that was also produced by him. So all the drums were programmed, and everything was done at his home studio.
Programmed as in
Programmed drums,
not played.
not played live. Yeah,
Wow.
and it was supposed to be a ballad that would fit in a film or something like that.
Yeah.
So it wasn't meant for my album, but the version I'm doing for the album is not.
If you find someone who fits her description, please tell me.
Have real instruments, real drums,
Okay.
and it'd be played like a blues ballad, but in the same format, in the same sort of rhythm, everything, except the version that you hear now
Right.
was kind of done differently.
Yeah. Studio.
and-
So I Believe in Angels. Pardon me for asking. Part of a set of, did you say 8 songs earlier?
Six.
Six.
It's an EP, actually.
Okay.
Not a full album.
I'm no judgment in the number. I'm just
So I
these will
Believe in
be-
Angels already finished. That's not going to be redone. I'm not going to do that.
I didn't see it out there. Is it out there?
It's out there, yeah.
Okay, jeez.
And so the new songs on the new album, there's a song called Mississippi.
I saw that and didn't.
Yeah, I've done a
Pull it
piano
down.
version of it,
Right.
which I haven't released yet because it's not quite finished, and I'm trying to make a video for that song because
Oh no, I saw Mississippi Blues Rescue Me. That was something else. That was on your lessons. That was with the guitar, the cotton mouth band. Yeah.
So
Okay.
Blues Rescue Me, Mississippi. There's a version, my version of Parchment Farm,
Okay.
old Mose Allison song, but kind of done in a blues rock way. It's a song I wrote called Mercury. It's a Texas blues shuffle.
Mercury.
Yeah. I think there's Baby Don't You Call Me Daddy. There's about 6 songs for this EP. A few originals and a couple of covers will be on that EP.
So to ask this stupid question. So does this go on to Spotify as a Keith Nolan EP with a name? 6 songs.
Yeah, undecided, but I think it'll be the Cottonmouth Kings as an album because all the players are part of the band.
Okay.
So it'll be a band name, and obviously, yeah, it'll be Keith Nolan, but I don't like the Keith Nolan and the Cottonmouth Kings,
Yeah.
but people associate me with it as the writer, but I've always preferred just band titles, you know, like the Allman Brothers or you know, stuff like that. So
You too.
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So when 2025?
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
And because we've tracked six of those songs already, and I have to do a lot of the rhythm tracks are already done. Drums and bass and stuff like that are done. Rhythm guitars are done. So some more guitar work has to be done, and all my vocals have to be done.
Do you
So
play the guitar?
On Mississippi, I do.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen you out and about on some of the videos, and
Yeah, 'cause
maybe
some
that's because you just showed up somewhere and say,
Yeah,
no
'cause-
piano here. Go
Yeah, that's
play the
right. Because
guitar."
there will be keyboards on it.
Yeah.
But I do play rhythm guitar.
Yeah, good.
On 2 tracks I wrote on guitar.
Nice. Do you like doing that? Do you like playing the guitar? Do you like playing and recording your guitar playing? Or is it so far inferior to your piano playing it's a frustration?
I'm really not very good on the guitar,
Yeah.
but I love doing it and I love playing. So it looks better than it actually is. So because I've really wood shit at those bits that I've learned on guitar.
If we move into close-ups and they don't look like
Don't
your
call
hands.
me. Don't call me for a gig to play guitar. You'll be sorry.
Yeah.
So, but pardon me for asking. When I did that song, a friend of mine, David Cast, was in town, and he messaged me. He goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm in the studio." He goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing one of my tracks." He goes, "You want some saxophone?" I said, "Really?" Yeah. I said, "I'd love some saxophone, especially his saxophone." So he turned up with his saxophone and played. Pretty much, he listened to it once and pretty much played that.
Nice.
We did a second take, but that was pretty much what went down. Yeah. And he was the saxophone player with the Dave Matthews Band
Nice.
for years.
Yeah.
And that's how good that is. So there's ambient guitars there, so we never actually did the rest of the guitars.
Yeah,
Because the sax just dominated in an amazing way. And it's just so musical and melodic. It just became that version. So I kept that version and released that version.
Yeah.
But it's not the version
For the album.
Yeah,
so to be clear, sax solo, drums, keys, vocals, no guitar in that version.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, when is it coming in? And I thought, wow, this is awesome. Like,
well, musically, we didn't think there was any room for it.
Right.
For that kind of...
Yeah, and I take a cynical approach as I think about it and think, oh, he's going to tour this. Is he going to tour without a guitar? I was going to say, oh, this is going to be an economic tour.
There's actually electronic guitar,
yeah,
but it's all blown out with reverbs and ambience, like almost like chords and
I
stuff.
assumed that was keyboard. Yeah.
Well, it is essentially.
Right. So you got me trying to understand what I understand, but very interesting. And so I was gonna pick out. Frank, we're gonna drop in with his permission on video. He says it here. Pardon me for asking the non-album or EP version. But I wanted to put a couple of sequences of some of your ambient music. I don't want to call it that if you're not calling it. What are you calling the top 5 songs on your Spotify that seem to just be instrumental with you? Some beatless. Are those ambient songs?
Some of them are. There's an ambient album. There's a sci-fi album.
Right, sci-fi.
And then there's meditations,
right?
Wellness,
Bodhi tree.
Yeah. So I don't know which particular.
Yeah, fair enough. So,
but there's some with Japanese titles,
right?
Which I just thought would be cool because it was kind of influenced from Zen.
I think that's your biggest played one.
Yeah. So I kind of had these English titles and I translated them to Japanese, just for.
Well, it works.
Really.
So I would say to go look at the Bandcamp. To play and jump around through these, and you have a lot of them. But Frank and I will take our liberties. We'll string some together and see if you like it that way. But I want to put some Keith stuff on there. So the social media for Keith for Bandcamp is Keith the Human.
Yeah.
You seem to have an aversion to your own name. So
well, no, it was. I put pretty much all my different compositions, and it was so diverse.
Yeah.
Like I have, there's some EDM tracks that I really like making, like minimal house, like Double Shine, and there's one called Colorful You, and so stuff that I really like. And I've done 2 or 3 chill out. Café Del Mar kind of albums. So that's not Keith the blues guy,
right?
Keith Nolan.
It is,
but it's kind of. So I thought, and it's more kind of chill and sci-fi. And
do you get asked to play those live?
No, never. No, most people don't even know I do this. Like have that.
We're cutting this out, Frank. All this last hour.
So Keith the Human was kind of somewhere I could hang.
Could you play this live? Could you see a version of you pulling this out on your keyboard and going in front of 1,000 people on Rio Beach, or 10,000 or 1,000,000 people on Rio Beach, and playing a series of because you have a bunch of them. You have a lot of music there.
Yeah, and it's on. I found out quite a lot of playlists and stuff. But yeah, I don't. Years ago in Koh Samui, there was a hotel. I can't remember the name, but they had an auditorium, and it overlooked the ocean.
Nice.
So this is so funny. I met a German guy who was the bodyguard to the Dalai Lama years ago. In another life, yeah. Winnie. And Winnie Rhodes, his name was. And he's a lovely, lovely guy. And I met him in Koh Samui. I used to go down there to play with my blues band.
But just a lethal weapon, by the way.
And I got and I got a contract to do a wellness album for a place called Tamarind Springs, beautiful place. And they said, "Would you make us an album?" But we have this guy that plays the healing bowls, and he was the bodyguard to the Dalai Lama. I was like, "Great, I'd love to meet him." So we ended up getting on great. He was a lovely guy, and really super interesting. And he would go around the world healing people with 9 Tibetan healing bowls. And that was his new life. And he was living in Koh Samui, and he had a room, and people would book in through hotels and go to see him and get treatments. That's how he lived.
Fair enough.
And because I was making a designer album for these people, for this resort, to have their own designer album that they could promote themselves by and have their own music and also sell it, they said, "Would you record him and make him part of this album, because he's a part of us?" And I was like, "Yeah, great." So he had to come to Bangkok to my studio, and I recorded a couple of hours, which we both fell asleep during. Like, it was like,
because he was treating you.
Pretty much.
You were getting the treatment.
We're in the studio going,
I feel great.
2 minutes of F sharp, and that ball would just. Anyway, we ended up with an album. I ended up doing I think 3 albums in total with him since. Anyway, he was lovely. We recorded all his stuff, and we incorporated it in this album. And he called me up one day after it was all released and stuff. He goes, "Hey, Keith, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm just, doing whatever I was doing in the studio." He goes, "Do you want to come and do a gig with me?" I was like, "Doing a gig?" He goes, "Yeah, I got a great guitar player. You know him. His name's Roland." I said, yeah, I know Roland, who also lived in Samui. And I'd done an album with him years ago. And he was a really good guitar player. And I said, "Yeah, what sort of gig?" He goes, "Well, it's like a wellness gig." And he said, we're gonna do some of the stuff that you create with soundscapes and ambient pads, and I'm gonna play bowls to it, and then the guitar player is gonna play heavy metal distortion, but turned down really low.
Quiet.
Yeah.
Quiet heavy metal.
I was like, okay, I'm in. Okay, whatever. Let's do it. So we went to this place, and there was no set list. There was nothing. We had no idea what we were going to do. But
you're on stage?
Yeah, they had created a stage where Winnie sat in his robes with 9 bowls around him.
Mic'd?
Yeah, everything was mic'd.
9 mics or 3?
No, just ambient.
Okay.
Maybe 2 mics.
Okay.
No, because they resonate quite well. So, and there was 150 people turned up to this event, right? This gig, this concert.
Outside?
Yeah, it was
covered.
It was covered, but it was open to the ocean.
So just
open to the ocean.
Just beautiful.
So, it was really spectacular. And it was a quiet night. Everything was cool. And I had brought my laptop, and I had brought a MIDI keyboard, and I had all my sounds, ambient sounds from
the library.
The library of So there's a VST instrument called Omnisphere.
Right.
It has all these magnificent, layers and layers. Each sound has layers of sounds, and it sounds great. So and then my buddy, in his t-shirt and his jeans, and he's going to play some.
Is he playing a flying V through a Marshall?
No, just he had his faithful Strat. And
is it through an amp, or are you all going through your board?
There's a sound system. We're all plugged in. I don't remember him having an amp. But
yeah,
had
so
modules.
Okay.
And we had monitors. And stuff. So we sound check. Everything's done. And I'm like, Winnie, what are we going to do? And he goes, well, we'll figure it out. And I'm like, okay. So we go into this room. There's 150 people there, and everybody's in robes and chilled, right?
Right.
And I'm going, this is so weird. And we sit down, and I'm trying not to bust laughing. I am just looking at everybody, and everybody's asleep, doing this,
meditating,
and I'm my head is just, I'm doing my head in.
Your boy from Dublin.
Yeah.
On a beach in Phuket.
And when he just goes, doom, and that's it. The gig is on, and we just start playing. Nice. We played for 2.5 hours. Nice. And he recorded the whole thing, and he put out an album called Lighter Side of the Moon, because it was was a moonlit night instead of dark side of the moon. Yeah, lighter side, light side, lighter side, or light side of the moon.
You know,
And I can't even believe that we did that.
how does it sound?
I can't remember.
Have you listened to it since?
No, not for years.
Is it out?
This was years ago. Yeah, he produced some CDs, and he sent me a copy. And but I don't think it ever made it onto streaming or anything like that because he wasn't really into anything like that. So yeah, but he produced them and had CDs made, and he used to tour and travel and sell them as he did these, healing sessions around the world.
I think
Incredible! What a great journey for a guy who also was a bodyguard to the Dalai Lama.
But what a great journey for you too. I mean, if you think about this, where we started from and before when we were chatting before we went live here recording was, what are we doing? And it's expat on the road, Dublin boy, gonna conquer the piano world or the keyboard world, gets his apprenticeship done, does his electronic work until he exhausts it as the rest of the world robotizes, and you pick up Pro Tools early on and you move through this, and now you've got the Gemma water commercial, which is with animated water people, and racetrack sounds, and you're still jamming several nights a week on piano, and you got a jazz album coming out, a blues album coming out with your own songs. Yeah. That's a pretty legit holding the course and transforming at the same time, right?
Yeah, I have to say, if it all stopped tomorrow, I'd be very happy that that I've been fortunate enough to sort of do what I'm doing and survive, because the world changes around you all the time. It's just like you just got to kind of believe and keep going. And it's been great.
Well, good for you. I mean, it's funny. I mentioned to a couple people that I know in passing that I was going to talk to you today if I didn't stalk you too hard and if you didn't cancel on me out of repugnance. But the responses were, oh, he's a lovely man. Oh, he's such a sweet man. And, oh, that'll be good. And so I think that's really why I wanted to reach out to you, because you were always viewed in the community as a ray of light, but also in an expat community that can, I think, sometimes be varied. You have integrity for a lot of different things here, and it's a pleasure to have you come on, and I appreciate it. And so I just wanted to pass those words back to you. This wasn't just some blatant stalking. It was because all of the signs seem to be,
it's okay.
And going to see you play, it was really a pleasure to see you pulling together the community here of jazz and blues musicians to come play with you, and you're very versatile. So it's cool to see. And when
I'm kind of very proud that I'm part of it. First of all, and it's when you try to integrate somewhere and it becomes home. Yeah. Then I think it's worth it to make an effort and try to be part of, whether if it's books you're into in a book club or if it's music and jam and just making your way that way. Yeah. I think it's important to be involved, and I'm extremely proud that I can look around with the Thai musicians that I work with, and also in Vietnam, the lady I've been working with recently producing, and other artists I've played with. When I feel very honored and thankful and grateful and proud that I'm part of their lives too, and they're part of mine.
That's noticeable for us. I mean, you've integrated in ways that a lot of the other folks here trying to do something similar to you don't and can't. And I'm not saying they are unable to. I'm just saying they haven't figured the way. And so good for you on that.
It can take time and,
Well, you got to be a good guy, I think. It's sort of the culture here, right?
Try.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, the Roman Anton podcast, we do in 3 parts. We have an interview or discussion like this, and then we have a performance piece. And for those folks who come in who don't perform, sometimes we'll just play a song. And then we try to go somewhere in Bangkok to film or take a look at. So we have been to Benchikiti Park. We have been to Queen Bee. We have been to the Live Lounge. We have been to Speaker Box. We've been to restaurants. Frank, what was the name of your restaurant where we went to for your podcast over in wherever that is? Yeah, Tien Bien. So we've done, and we sat. It's way out. And so I think we sort of informally agreed through our chat that we would catch you playing live.
Okay. Yeah.
At possibly the Queen Bee tonight. And if you're playing at the Green Room tomorrow night, I would come over and get some different footage, but it would be less invasive so we don't start running around that venue and causing a fracas. Is that fair, or do you want to turn around and play something on that?
I don't mind. Whatever.
How about if we do this? How about if we take a break here, and the next footage is either of us at the Queen Bee or at the Green Room, or not. But
or not.
We're going to thank Keith Nolan for spending a good couple hours here today, and I appreciate it. I know,
and thanks for asking me
guy.
to be on the show. It's great.
Yeah.
It's my pleasure.
All right, Franco, let's shut her down, and we will reappear magically shortly. Thank you. Yeah, so, all right, we're back. Roman Anton podcast part 2 with Keith Nolan, playing some of his original music, Keith?
Yep.
All right, over to you.
I'm going to play a little bit of a song coming out on our new album. It's called, I have a piano version coming out of the song called Mississippi.
Right on.
And, it's a Delta blues. Hard times are coming, I can feel it in my bones. Hard times are coming, I can feel it in my bones. When the battles was forgotten, gonna feel the wrongs I've done. Now Mississippi's burning, a day as cold as night. Now Mississippi's burning, a day as cold as night. When the devil comes collecting, you better have your soul on ice. A gypsy woman told me, go home, make your bed. A gypsy woman told me, go home, make your bed. Put your house in order. Was all that woman said. But Mississippi, something like that.
That's awesome. That's legit. Good lyrics, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, geez, to not call yourself a lyricist now is weird because you're putting together stuff.
Yeah, sometimes songs come easy and sometimes they take a lot of work, but sometimes you hit on something and you roll with it and it comes.
You got a notebook? You got stuff? You got a thing?
Yeah,
And it's out there and there's reams of it, or is it fast and fleeting?
yeah. There's not all ideas make it to an album, but there's a lot of ideas, and I'm always jotting something on my phone or on a piece of paper. When I've got a song called "Mama Let Me In,"
Yeah.
it's been a couple of years and I still haven't finished because I haven't found the right words to. But I keep writing lines every time I think of something, and then I go back and I've got all these reams of bits, and then I try to cajole them into a song. But some like this one, and pardon me for asking, there's a couple of others that came already built in. You know, they have an idea and a concept. I just gotta find those little things, and the lyrics in this, I was really happy with some of the.
Yeah.
When the devil comes collecting, you better have your soul on ice. And
Yeah, I mean,
things just came, and I was like,
Yeah.
I'll take it. Thank you. That's good.
it's funny you say that. I mean, Shogo and I had a discussion last night where we're working on our 8th album or our 8th compilation of musics, and there's 6 songs that are sort of trying to eke their way into the final, and I've been writing some of these for years, and I know he's like, dude, I got to start working on these or not, and I'm like, oh, the lyrics are horrible at this part.
Yeah, some get finished and some just are not ready to come out yet. Some just and I don't really want to release something that I feel is really finished or whole. It's not complete yet.
Yeah.
So.
But it's funny. Pardon me for not asking. I thought it was a very integrated, cohesive set of lyrics that I thought doesn't sound like you wrote these at different times. It doesn't sound like it's a compilation of stuff. And sometimes you get those songs you're like some of the Paul McCartney style stuff. You're like, wow, these are loosely associated thoughts at best.
Yeah. And some albums that you hear from great artists, the second and third album are kind of leftovers, what didn't make it.
Right.
On the first or second album, you think that definitely belonged to there, but it didn't make the cut.
Right.
Or it wasn't finished yet.
But then you think maybe he was saying, I can't put it by Maybe I'm Amazed. It's just like, I should know better because that's the song I like, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have stuff like she had a song on the radio, it sounded like some voodoo chant. You hear the voices in her head say go. From that time on, her life was damned. Voodoo doll, voodoo doll. She moved to Vegas where she'd have a chance. They paid big money just to see her dance. Her body's hot but her heart was cold. And when she danced, collected souls. Voodoo doll. She had a boyfriend that she left behind. Said she called when she got a dime. He looked for her everywhere, but voodoo doll he could not find. Voodoo doll. And that song was about a guy that meets like an Asian girl. And he's got a job and money and all that, and he's at work and she's at home. And she just hears this song on the radio. And she thinks, I want to dance. And the song, that particular song, she thinks, that's it, I know what I want. And she just leaves. And she ends up in Vegas in a club, and they call her Voodoo Doll. She only comes out at 12 o'clock at night. And she can only dance to this song, and it drives men crazy, and she collects souls and just kills it. And he's looking but everywhere for her. That's what that song was about. And that was just an idea that came one day and it just worked.
And that's
everything,
it?
Yeah. And the song is longer.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to put it on the new album, or you are?
It's not on the new album because it doesn't fit with all the other blues.
Yeah.
But it's like our point.
Yeah.
It's a song that kind of just needs to be there,
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, so if you put that on, then you're outside your genre?
Kind of would be a little bit too eclectic, but I can release it as
a single.
As a song, just like one of the others. Like I Believe in Angels. It's a really good song, but it's kind of like Black Velvet, that kind of vibe. And
yeah, right. What is that?
But it's its own thing.
Yeah, right.
And it could end up in a movie or not, or something, but it doesn't really fit on our album as a song, but it's a song.
That's real interesting. I mean, it's interesting to see you take a pass on that, because that is like, wow, that is catchy. I mean, you walk out singing that song. You know what I'm saying? That the
we
nature.
play it live sometimes though, and it goes over really well. People love it,
People, I love that Voodoo Doll song.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden it's like, wow, that's instantly recognizable, as opposed to.
Maybe it'll get recorded properly later, but then again, you have to prioritize how much time you have, how many songs you're going to do, what should they be, and what do you want to achieve with them first of all. So you just try to get that out of the way first, and then the other stuff you can kind of come back to later if it's worth doing it.
So we have this song that we play about 2 minutes of, and I wrote the lyrics in sort of one shot a long time ago, and I've carried them forward, but I have an orchestral maybe 6-minute session that I haven't been able to get down in a way that you can translate to a group of people who are listening it to play. And I keep pushing that around, like, but it needs to be this big piece, and it's all horrible when I do it. Every time I go in to try and clean up the mess, it sort of gets a deeper shit pile. And it's funny, right? Like when you sort of like, that has a great jam, and I'm thinking, God, you're done. I mean, you got it.
But that's it. It's thing.
Yeah, right.
So maybe you just do that as a thing. It's like a lady I work with, Denny, and she's an amazing singer. And I said, why don't you do just a spoken word, and I'll put some music to it. So I wrote a piece, and she did, but she won't release it because it's not seen as part of thing. But it's really, really good.
Yeah.
And she just wrote a poem and spoke it throughout. And it actually, she did, she got creative and she decided to put a melody to create a chorus within it. But I'll see if I can find it and share it with you. But it's, she won't release it.
That's interesting. Do you work with the Lyrical Lunacy guys, Rory Breaker Morant or
No.
He's real interesting. He's been DJing at Above 11 for years, and does a lot of performance stuff. But they have Lyrical Lunacy where they do the spoken stuff. And then there's a guy named Pablo Roy. He has a band that he plays with. But these guys are very good at doing the spoken word music, sort of razor's edge.
Yeah.
It's been real interesting learning. I've gone to a couple of their events, and then there's the general constituency that does it as well. Those were singled out to me by Eddie, and so it was a pleasure getting in touch with those guys. But that spoken word thing seems to have, like Charlie McScallywag will go play with them, and there's a lot of people that will go up and these people on the spot will have musical accompaniment. It's almost like your bowl. I forget his name. The fellow when the three of you showed up with the heavy metal and you just showed up and play it, right?
Winnie Rhodes.
Yeah, obviously, if you can play like that, you can roll with it. But it's still funny to think about these songs when they hang around.
Yeah,
not ready.
Sometimes they just need to be written. But that was just like a project to see if she would do something with it, But
Just think like to go from McCartney 1 to McCartney 3, 30 years later. Like that song was like, oh my God. All right. I'm with Keith Nolan again at the Green Room. We've got some footage of this already, Keith.
Yep.
Thanks for having us tonight.
It's great.
Yeah,
I'm
looking forward to seeing you play. New spot.
Yeah.
You made the audacious claim. Your favorite spot to play the other day, or best sounding? What was it? I forget.
Well, I think now, with all the venues around that we do play, I think this by far has the best sound and vibe. It's small, as you can see, and we have a sound engineer that comes in, sound the gear, everything works. Most places we play, even the bigger places, the mixer's not working, or there's channels not working, or the microphones, and nobody seems to care. But Sagar, the owner here, he really cares about music. He cares about the musicians, and he cares. The stage is spotless.
Yeah, it is.
Everything is put back in its place after a show. Everybody's respectful, and the sound is just really good. The equipment's good. So we really like it because we can sound a little bit more produced and a little bit more polished, and we can get a better sound. And we like to sound check anyway. So, and once we find our place in any room, then that's kind of the base for to start the gig.
So I'm following you and I'm looking and I'm just trying to think what you look for in a room. You carry that red keyboard around. I've seen you playing it in multiple locations. You have other venues that actually have a keyboard that you borrow. What are you looking for when you walk into a place to set yourself up to get your sound? What's your most desired item? Do you need monitors?
Monitors.
Do you need? Okay. Yeah.
Monitors and a really good drum kit for the drummer. Because we don't carry our own drums, but Andy usually, well, not today, but because this is quite good, but he'll bring his own cymbals and he'll bring his own snare.
Yeah.
The bass amp is really good, and this guitar amp is particularly good.
Yeah. So, monitor, you got your keyboard, you like the drum kit here, you like the sound?
Yeah, and the layout, it's not quite perfect because we're literally playing to the wall, but people sit each side, but that's the way the room is. And but yeah, equipment-wise, I bring my own mic, and I've got my own kind of little vocal processor, and so that works for me for any room, so I can tweak. myself. I bring my own keyboard because
So that's a vocal processor, the orange thing on top of the amp?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And it gives me harmonies if I want in a chorus or something very subtle. I don't use it a lot. And that helps. The Nord, I love the Nord because I used to carry around Nord E700, one of my synths, a controller keyboard or a synth, either or, and a Nord. So, and after a while, you just get tired of carrying stuff around, and it's not.
But you do it because you want to play it, right?
Yeah. But this gives me everything I need.
Yeah,
It's got good pianos. It's got great Rhodes strings, piano and string, synth, and it's got a Hammond, and it's one of the best Hammond sounds that you can get. That's not a Hammond.
Yeah.
And I play a lot of Hammond. I play a lot of blues, soul, Hammond, R&B kind of sounds.
But to say best that you can find is you've looked around, right? This isn't your first rodeo, so you're...
Yeah, and it's professional. The keys, the action, and it has a very professional cost to it too. So, but it is worth it.
Do you play worse with synthesizer action? Do you feel affected if you don't have real action? If you just have a sort of a plastic key and a keyboard and you're...
No, but because I think for synth, I'm kind of used to just plastic keyboards, like all the old synths weren't weighted anyway.
Right.
And this is weighted or semi-weighted. So it's kind of, you have to play a little bit more into it. But, on a normal synth keyboard, you can just fly on it because there's no weighted. Yeah. Whereas this is weighted because it's got Hammond and it's got piano, so it feels better. Yeah, cool. So you use different purposes, you get used to it.
I went over some of my notes yesterday from what we talked about, and I remember, I forgot to ask this, I remember seeing you on a large stage on a grand piano with, it looked like it was a commercial for a TV show or something that was produced and glitzy and flashy, and there was a big piano playing live. It looked like you would play live on the larger piano. How do you deal with the sound of a piano on a stage where the other guys have volume to them, electric volume, and you mic it? Do you have preferences for that?
Well, again, it comes back to monitors.
Yeah.
And really, with an acoustic instrument, and same when in a jazz situation, when people have a double bass, you have to play to the volume, of that person, because if you don't, they're going to get drowned out, and that doesn't work for anybody. So then there's no production. If you get a good stage, the secret really is to get a good stage sound. Once everybody hears each other and you find a balance for each other. I mean, if you're not doing that, then you've got a problem in your band, first of all. And second of all, then it's really the house's job to make you sound. I try not to even consider what it might sound like out front. Right. You can only concentrate on the room. What you guys are hearing, and kind of work to that.
That's interesting. So how about when you get in the studio then and you're on a grand piano or a string piano and you're miking it, do you have a lot of experience fooling around with that? Have you spent time trying to figure out the best way to pick that up?
I'm not.
And is your preferred action the Nord or something else?
It depends what you're recording.
Yeah.
So if I'm just doing a soulful ballad or a rock piano track, rock stuff, you're probably better off with a really decent sounding Yamaha keyboard. But if you're playing a classical piece or something, quite soulful, and you have a real piano, and if the piano's in tune, because a lot of pianos can be slightly out, then it's going to put everybody else out. But if it's in tune, then miking it, to answer your first question, miking it is really a difficult thing. People do it different ways. So usually on a piano, there's like 2 or 3 portholes in the back. Slide it over. Yeah. So you would have at least one mic near a porthole, just sort of rested on a towel near a porthole. And they have now these pickups, acoustic pickups that are placed underneath, and they look like these kind of triangle units, and I put it, and it actually picks up the resonance of the whole piano. But it's very, very specific work. They really have to know what they're doing.
Interesting. And so, do you have a preset sound that is your go-to grand piano or concert hall piano sound that you referred to?
I have, and on here I have two piano sounds, and one is kind of the studio piano, which gets me away with any kind of piano thing, and I might layer string sometimes. The second one is kind of, if I'm only doing piano solo, it's got a kind of more bitey old sound. But in saying that, if I'm recording an album, I might play on my key, if I'm playing on my keyboard, but I won't use the onboard sounds. Right. I will go to some very, very high-end, like some of my grand piano sounds are like 80 gigs, up to 100 gigs.
What does the gig get at? Breadth and depth and so like volume?
And it just means that the sample of a Steinway piano is like out of this world, would, I wouldn't use the piano player, but I will use it to track. And then I will replace that with a really great piano sound, or I'll use that and use my computer through Logic or Mainstage and use one of the VST instruments for record. Well, for playing wise, I can play it with this, but I would transfer the sound then or change the sound to a better sound, not the onboard sounds.
So when you sit down to play Mississippi right now, how much deliberation is there as you get that ready for the album version? And then do you graduate through your various sounds that you like and say, my final version of Mississippi will be with the X patch or whatever?
I have.
And do you have discussions with yourself over this? Like,
it's kind of like, okay, and it's kind of like, what have I got to what resources have I got to kind of choose from, and then I find the most appropriate piano sound that I like, and if I like it, and unless somebody says, hey, that piano sounds rubbish, can we try something else? Then I'll listen. But if I like it, then I'll pretty much go with that. And it has to feel right for me.
Let's go with this. Let's go with the psychology of patches then. Like, if someone says, Keith, that doesn't sound right, and you're wed to Mississippi, you're wed to that sound, and they say that, does it ever throw you for a loop and say, oh, I'm making a mistake, or do you offboard that?
Yeah, well, I would question, so why does it sound... But it's like you listen to Steely Dan, or you listen to Led Zeppelin, you listen to Jimmy's, not Jimmy Smith actually, because that's all Hammond, but you listen to Dr. John, for example. Another piano just won't, like a nice Yamaha C25, and it's not going to C3, it's not going to sound right. For him. It's gotta have age and vintage. It's gotta have soul. It's gotta have it's got bounce. So it's kind of relative to that particular song. But the same piano will not work in another song I'm playing. But it will for Mississippi, for example. That we're talking about that song. So it's kind of, I think it's indicative to whatever song you're working on, what's right for that. You'll see it with Steely Dan when you're talking to these guys and they try all these different guitars and amplifiers, combinations, because the same guitar, the same amp, is not going to work for a section in a different song. You just can't roll with the same stuff and expect it to work. So it's kind of, but I think with blues, it's easier because there's a staple of sounds that work for that style of music, which is piano, Rhodes, and Hammond organ.
Right, and you wonder if the loss of Walter Becker makes it not reproducible. And you know what I mean? Like, when it's so tied to the person and the instrument and the style of play, you can copy him and you can get everything he had, but you always wonder, like, whoa, will it ever be played like that again live?
Yeah, well, it's hard to, because then what bands have to do is, because they get so creative in the studio, and then when they go out to play live, they've got to go and get all this gear to try and reproduce the same sounds live, and they don't normally just have it lying around, because you quite often go into the studio, and they have a real American Princeton 65 reverb, not the newer modern version, and it sounds much good, but you don't own one, so you got to go on the road and try to emulate that. And a lot of those bands had these huge problems because they got, like Thin Lizzy, the bass with Phil Lynott, when they went on tour and they had these sounds, they were trying to get the studio sound so they sound like the record. They want to sound like the record, but it's near impossible. But live gives you you can make allowances for being live, that people can
think that that's what you're hearing, but
Thank you.
or Pink Floyd, for example, to emulate Dave Gilmour's sound. I mean, you know,
Yeah, the eternal question, right? How you're gonna do it?
God of guitar.
So
you
I
know.
think you raised the last thing I wanted to get your feedback on is, are you're a gear junkie maybe on some level. How about shopping in Bangkok for musical equipment? Are you satisfied? Do you find what you need? Is it Jira Music? Is it CT? Is it String Shop? Or or do you end up finding it, getting it on your own, bringing it back? Is there a community
Sometime-
for you around gear?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it depends what you're looking for.
So
Sometimes
you're looking for keyboards. You're looking for that stuff I'm looking at.
Yeah, so for example, which I don't really want to carry it around now. I don't. My place isn't big enough. When I had my recording studio, I had a spare room, so I had loads of stuff, and I ended up selling mostly. I have 4 Rode cases in case for different keyboards. If I'm going on tour, I'll take this. I have a huge one for this and the Ordi 700, smaller ones for other stuff.
So did you carry that around in a soft pack?
Yeah, at the moment,
okay.
I have a soft pack, but I also have a Rode case.
Do you take it on your motorcycle?
No.
Okay, I was gonna say
No.
that's too heavy.
It's too
man.
heavy.
But we've seen heavier, right?
Yeah,
On the
yeah,
road
yeah.
With people's backs
Oh,
up.
yeah, I don't know how to do it.
Okay, so music, gear,
So I
places.
think it depends if you're looking. Sometimes I just go checking stuff out. I like to go and hang out in the guitar shop. I'm not a guitar player, but I have a few guitars, and I like to.
Yeah.
And you know, I might see something and like, oh, that's really cool, and you might grab it or not. But keyboards, I'm kind of very set. And now that I've discovered all these VST instruments, and I've got MIDI keyboards like a Mini Akai, I've got a Roland A88, I've got a M Audio 88, I've got a Alesis, another MIDI keyboard. So it depends on what. Like if I'm touring with somebody else or doing a session, I might bring a couple of things. And I'll set up my laptop with Mainstage or Logic, and I'll use my VNC. Like when I'm doing the TV show, then I've got a different rig. I don't bring this.
Do you get to leave it there, or do you?
No, you can't, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah, it's
So-
like a huge setup and a huge breakdown at the end.
So to all you kids out there, it is the truth that being a piano player, you're carrying around unless you figured out GarageBand, which is possible. But yeah, interesting. Well, good. So I really appreciate you doing this. So yesterday we covered a lot of ground. I went back home and listened to some of the stuff, and I listened to some of the modern stuff, and I really started to get ready for the album. I started thinking about the album. I'm excited about that. Is there anything else you want to promote or say that you're working on, or places to find you, or places you're playing at regularly that people, if they watch this in the next week or two?
I mean, you know, the gigs, we do have a couple of regular gigs, like here at the Green Room every second Monday. We're at the Golden Giraffe every Friday.
A couple blocks away, Soi 11.
Yeah, and you know, we play Wahin once a month. We do Chiang Mai every couple of months.
Where are you playing in Wahin?
The Father Ted's.
Father Ted's, nice.
Yeah, but there's no set date. We kind of organise it every month.
Okay, good.
And yeah, I mean, just you know, if you'd be so kind and follow us on Instagram, you just find the Cottonmouth Kings.
Cottonmouth Kings, COTTONMOUTH Kings.
Yeah.
One word, one thing.
Yeah.
Spaces or whatever.
And same on Facebook or whatever. But
Okay.
yeah, we just obviously appreciate new followers and fans that want to come and check out our music, and obviously all the covers we play as well. You know. So
Well, listen, we're going to record a little bit of you playing. We already got some awesome footage.
Okay.
I really appreciate this. I know you're a busy
Thanks.
guy. We're looking forward to seeing you back in action. But
Yeah, thank you.
We'll be here, and we may duck out on you, but it's been a real pleasure
It's
getting
been
to
a
talk to you.
pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show, and thank you everybody for watching and listening.
All right, guys, thank you. The show goes with us tonight. We'll see how this goes. Thank you, guys. See you.
Baby, See your face. I know it's not real. You're just an illusion now. How I used to feel. Makes me angry.
Quiet.